Dinosaur. Dinosaur man. Where'd he come from? 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 Dinosaur man.
Hello and welcome to Dinosaur Man News and Reviews. I'm Andy Hughes. I'm here with Alex Hudson.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon to you, sir.
Good afternoon.
How are you?
Good afternoon.
Oh no. Oh no.
Yeah.
Put a paper
Got
clip
stuck
into
in
his
a
ear.
glitch. Yeah, I'm good. Thank you. How are you?
I'm very well.
I
All
mean-
the better for seeing you.
Okay, we live in the same house.
Am
Are you worried that I didn't notice this? Or that you didn't notice this?
my days are long in your absence.
Thank you. I think. I don't know. I don't know if that's a compliment. Probably not.
It's always a compliment.
Everything's
I'm
fine.
a complimentary person.
Absolutely.
Hi.
Hello.
Welcome to the episode, though.
Weird energy.
Yeah. You came in so businesslike it threw me.
Got to mix it up.
Yeah.
What do you want me to do?
You're the clown, remember?
Oh, Zibby Zabby, welcome to the podcast.
Okay, I've decided I want the businessman.
Yeah, you can have that or that, basically.
It's one or the other.
Absolutely it is. What's going on? What are we doing?
We're doing a podcast.
The fuck? And you tell me now? This is how you tell me?
It's short for
With this microphone in front of my face?
Podded Cast.
Okay, what's podded about it? As in, like, podded peas?
Yeah, have you not noticed we're in a pea? We're in one giant pea. We are James,
Jesus Christ.
and this is our giant pea.
Jesus Christ.
We are the only podcast in the world that talks
Full stop.
news and reviews.
Uh-huh.
This week, we're going to focus on movie news and reviews.
Sure.
I figured that's probably the best way to do
Next
it.
week? Who knows?
Next week, we might dip our toes into...
Well, next week isn't a news and reviews.
Dip our toes into something a little bit more salacious.
The thing is, I know what episode we got planned for next week. I don't really think it's salacious.
On this episode, we will talk...
This isn't like celebrity news where we're like, who you fucking?
Oh, that's exactly what we're going to talk about.
Okay.
We're going to talk celebrities.
Uh-huh. And who
gonna-
they fucking?
We're going to talk politics.
And who they're fucking. The people,
Yeah,
I should imagine.
always. But that's all for next week.
It really isn't, though. I know that it isn't.
When Dinosaur Man go rogue.
No, we go and do the same.
Roving reporting.
Fine.
Vox pops on the street.
Okay.
But this week, we are going to talk movies.
Hey, what about if it was Cocoa Pops on the street instead?
Cocoa Pops
They spilled out of the...
pop.
What?
No.
Oh, no,
oh,
he's
no.
broken.
Ah.
He's broken. He tried to think of a topper for Cocoa Pops, and he went Cocoa Pops Pops. Cocoa Pops, the Choco Rocks. Those ones.
I don't know. I've shut down.
Okay, cool.
What will we be talking about this week?
I think we need to be talking about you resigning from this podcast with immediate effect.
No, not before we get salacious.
You're clearly in no fit state to host. So we're going to review, I think, 4 movies and a TV show, maybe?
Yeah.
I think that's correct. I've got 4 movies on my list.
And I
You've
saw a
seen
TV
one of
show,
those.
yeah.
And you've also seen a TV show.
Yeah.
And a couple of episodes, maybe, of another TV
Yeah, I can
show.
talk about that if you want.
Well, I've got a theme tune for it, so you better fucking talk about it.
Okay.
Okay, so we'll be reviewing Army of the Dead, The Reckoning,
Okay.
A Quiet Place Part 2, probably should have led with that one, and The Human Factor. You're also going to be reviewing Season 2 of Love, Death, and Robots. And the little teaser, there's a theme tune coming for another segment.
Ooh.
Okay, so you better fucking stick with this program you're going to be reviewing week by week. Okay.
But before we get there, we must get to movie news. But
Yeah.
Before we get to movie news, we must take this little avenue down to the side alley that's called gaming news.
Sure. Good news, everyone. Olympic Games Tokyo 2020, the official video game, is still coming to Switch this summer.
Have you seen what's in this, by the way?
So I'm looking at the promotional photo they've got here. It looks like they've got a person dressed up as a Los Angeles Laker.
Yeah.
They've got an astronaut running a race.
Yeah.
They've got a woman in a flat cap kicking a football.
Okay.
They've got divers who actually are in diving... sorry, not divers. Swimmers in actual swimming gear, so that's fine. They've got a cowboy playing tennis.
Yep.
They've got people dressed in a QPR shirt who are playing rugby.
Okay.
They've got what looks like sort of cosmic boxing. They've got BMX bandits.
Yep.
I mean, that's what I can see here.
It
gives me a full list.
The one I saw yesterday was Sonic's in this, right?
Is he?
Yeah. But it's not Sonic as in, like, computer-generated Sonic. It looks like it's a man in a Sonic costume.
Okay.
So it looks like somebody wearing an ill-fitting Sonic costume in all the events.
Right, okay. Well, it looks like that might be just a thing that you can unlock, presumably, because it looks like there are various different dressing up outfits that you can dress up in. So good news, if you wanted to play 100 meters, 4 times 100 meters relay, 110 meters hurdles, hammer throw, long jump, baseball, basketball, beach volleyball, BMX bracket cycling, boxing, judo, rugby sevens, football bracket soccer, 100 meter freestyle bracket swimming, 200 meters individual medley brackets vegetable, sport climbing, table tennis, actual tennis, plate tennis,
When I was a kid...
fork tennis, table, plate, fork, knife, all good tennis.
When I was a kid,
Yeah.
there was a version of this, and I don't know if it was the Standard Olympics or was the Winter Olympics. It's in there, but it's for the N64.
Okay.
And I remember playing so much of it. I think I got it really cheap, and then I played it all the time. And I was really bad at it. I'm not going to get this game.
Why would you? It's a waste of time.
I'm going to wait until it goes on to like Game Pass or something, and then I'll play it. And then I'll play it. And then I'll be the best plate tennis.
Well, as someone who believes that the Olympics are basically not... they're not
Are you
necessary.
anti-Olympics now?
Yeah. I think any kind of international tournament is stupid. Because it then promotes dominance over the other countries, which then promotes conflict.
But you are our entry into the hot dog eating world championships this year.
And I will be representing the entire world. And I believe I can eat enough hot dogs to make it look like I am the entire world. 1 billion hot dogs.
How many hot dogs do you think you could eat in a minute?
In a minute, 2 hot dogs.
I don't even think I could get to 2.
Come on. 1.5 at least.
Maybe.
You could do 1.5.
It's like when
You don't like hot dogs. That's your problem. You couldn't do 1. Why would we choose you? Pathetic. You're failure already.
I was the original pick, and then they realised that was a terrible choice. It's cool. So we're going to get that, and you're going to review that game.
Absolutely.
When we get our review copy come
I'm
through.
not going to... I don't think Sega are going to send us a review copy.
When you are there like, I got to play bobsled.
It's not on there.
No.
It's the normal Olympics, regular flavour Olympics. Anyway, moving on. Actual movie news.
Movie news.
You start with your one. Because you told me not to look at this. So I've decided not to look at it.
So, this week we've got a whole lot of trailers to get through. That's coming. And basically all the trailers...
Just in case they were tuning in going, when are they going to talk about the trailers?
Oh, the amount of trailers that came out, you'd think so.
Yeah, probably.
But the first thing I wanted to talk to you about was, did you know they were doing a live-action Powerpuff Girls series?
Yes, we've reported on this.
Have you seen the news lately about it?
I've heard that there was a leak because you put in the chat that there was a leak of a script and that it's how do you do fellow kids style bad.
So for all the uninitiated, basically they're doing a live-action Powerpuff Girls, which was the TV show from the 90s? About 3 children who were created to basically fight crime. I don't know, did you ever watch it?
No, it wasn't really my thing, but I'm sure it was very good. People love it.
People loved it. Well, they're doing a live action one, which stars Don Faison, Chloe Bennett, Dove Cameron, and Yana Parrott. And it's basically, you'll know a couple of those names. Donald Faison, from Scrubs.
Of course.
Chloe Bennett was in
He's a
Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Powerpuff Girl.
He's the dad, I believe, or the scientist.
Okay.
And the idea is basically, it's these girls, but they're now all grown up, they're in adults, and they're reflecting on kind of what their childhood was like.
Mm-hmm.
So it's been written by Diablo Cody.
Okay.
And they created the pilot episode, and it was filmed and everything like that. And then they decided to scrap it and start again.
Mm-hmm.
The reason given behind it was, so this is from Mark Pedowitz, who seems to be the showrunner, or at least the boss of CW. And basically said, the reason we do pilots is sometimes things miss. This was just a miss. We believe in the cast completely. We believe in Diablo and Heather, the writers. In this case, the pilot didn't work. And then basically goes on to say, look, it's a well-loved property that we want to kind of do justice to. And we felt the pilot's tone may have been a little bit campy. He says, you learn things and you test things out. In this case, we felt it. Let's take a step back and go back to the drawing board, because this is a powerful property. It has engaged a lot of interest, and we want to get it right before we put it on. Now, people were already off board with this because of the fact that, like, they showed some pictures from the set, and the costumes they're wearing seems to be kind of, it's really kind of bad. But what also happened this week, before this was cancelled, was the script got leaked.
Okay.
And people are still unclear whether it's the actual script. But the fact that it was taken down so fast makes people think this may have been the case. I want to read to you some of the excerpts of the script.
Okay.
Leaked. And just gauge your opinion on whether you... Because I really want to see this version of it now. I had no interest before, but it sounds incredible. So, Bubbles says, guys, how can you turn down an evil recon mission? Especially when said mish would be a perfect storyline for my documentary, Bubbles is Back. To which Buttercup says, not to be confused with your other film, Bubbles on Her Back. Break.
Okay.
Bubble says, Blossom's fine. I saw on her Insta that she has a boyfriend. I saw on her LinkedIn that she got promoted. And I saw on her Facebook that she still talks to Grandpa despite their political differences.
Okay.
Buttercup says, coming back here is probably triggering for her. Triggering in inverted commas.
Probably is.
Bubbles. Why? Because she's the one who killed Mojo? I mean, moveon.org.
Well, at least it's a not-for-profit website.
Buttercup says, Bloss, wake up or we'll leak your nudes everywhere.
I mean, I feel like this cannot be real.
Bubble says, look, we love being Powerpuff Girls, but sometimes we want to do other things too. Like in Dirty Dancing, Baby wanted to join the Peace Corps, but she also wanted to be a fancy slut.
They've kind of got to the heart of Dirty Dancing there, haven't they?
Narrator says, he'd hoped to use the chemical to gain powers himself. Powers he'd use for good, like Elon Musk. But also for his own personal gain, like Elon Musk.
Okay.
It's so edgy.
I mean, the first couple I was like, oh, okay, so it's going with the Riverdale kind of aspect of it being a bit of a sexualized version of something from your youth. I mean, it's not... I don't think this is real.
Like I said, I can't find anywhere...
This doesn't sound real.
Whether that's the real script.
This sounds like fan fiction
But
that has been written.
It was taken down, like, it was basically everyone that went up was taken down by the company really fast.
Yeah.
And nobody's willing to comment on whether it's real or not. Nobody's actually said, that's not the script. And I kind of really hope it is. And I really want to see that pilot.
It sounds just like someone on the internet has written this, put it up, and then they've legalized it and said, right, well, it's referencing our property, we're taking it down. It doesn't sound real to me.
But I hope it is.
Well, I'm sure if it is, people will watch that series.
I will watch that series.
Okay.
I don't want to watch this whole kind of, we're going to make it into this kind of dark, edgy, adult series. I want to watch that one. The one
but that's
where none
dark,
of the
edgy,
jokes
and adult, remember? Because it references nudes.
Exactly. And relapsing and rehab.
Yeah. It's just like Riverdale.
Oh.
I think you should just watch Riverdale. This is what that show is, apparently. I think you might enjoy Riverdale.
Everyone's too handsome in Riverdale.
Yeah, but everyone's probably too handsome in Powerpuff Girls.
Why is everyone too handsome?
It's TV. That's kind of the whole point of it, isn't it? Okay, moving on. Black Panther. So we reported last time, maybe, that Black Panther 2 is going to be called Black Panther Wakanda Forever. Mm-hmm. Now, in addition to this, Danai Gurira, who is... she was in the first one, wasn't she?
Yeah.
She's going to be having her own TV series on Disney Plus, focused on her character, Okoye.
Okoye, yeah.
Which will be an origin story of some kind. No further details are known. Representatives for Disney and Marvel didn't immediately respond to requests for comment.
Be interesting, because I know they're doing... If I remember rightly, they're doing a Wakanda-based series as well. That was announced previously.
But this is not it? Is that right?
I don't know.
I'm presuming this is it.
Because I thought they were doing one about just Wakanda in general.
But maybe they've shifted that to the movie now.
Maybe, because no idea what that movie's going to end up looking like. Black Panther 2. It's going to be very interesting to see how that shifts along with everything that kind of happened off screen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so this... Yeah, I mean, this is in reference to an initial article that was published 2 years ago saying that there was a Black Panther TV series, and these are further details for it. So I'm guessing that's it. But I don't know. They haven't announced anything officially yet. But hey, maybe it'll happen. Maybe it won't. Who knows? So, final bit of news before we move on to trailers. Mm-hmm. Amazon are in the process of purchasing MGM for $8.45 billion.
So much money.
It's subject to finalising and clearing a few different hurdles now. Second largest acquisition by Amazon, behind its $13.7 billion purchase of Whole Foods in 2017. So it's a hell of a lot of money to be spent. It's an interesting move because on the face of it, it's not necessarily a instant money spinner. Mm-hmm. Because if you look at the properties that they have going forward in terms of franchise stuff, and particularly because Amazon have switched recently to being more focused on trying to put out commercial successes rather than critical ones, you know, things like, they spent a lot of money on Coming to America.
Yeah.
And what was the other one they picked up recently? Without Remorse was a Paramount thing, wasn't it? They bought in. So, yeah, with that, it kind of feels like maybe, if you're looking at this as a money-spinning thing, you've got the Creed series and you've got James Bond, and that's kind of it on the film front. What it does is it sort of buys you a legitimacy that maybe you can't put a price on, in that you're buying a studio that has a long and storied history in Hollywood. But, James Bond alone kind of feels like, well, that's good. That's something that you can then put yourself behind and say, well, we're going to be the ones who are getting the James Bond movies out there every 3 years or whatever. So, that's a positive, I guess. But yeah, it's kind of an interesting one because it feels like it's a hell of a lot of money for something that maybe is more of a sort of branding move more than anything else.
Yeah, because I saw somebody mention the fact that on the face of things, like, if you look at what Disney did, where they brought, Marvel and Lucasfilm for basically the same price. Mm-hmm. And those are huge franchises that are money spinners. On the balance of things, this being kind of, twice as much as Lucasfilm, do you get twice as much back? And I don't know. Like, I was confused why they were buying them.
I mean, MGM have been debt-ridden for years now, and as part of this, so part of that price is them taking on the debts of MGM. So the price itself doesn't necessarily reflect the market value of MGM. It reflects the market value of MGM in addition to taking on their debts and then paying them off. So really it's a case of it's going to expand their catalogue quite significantly because you're looking at over 4,000 movies, 17,000 TV shows. So it basically gives them the ability to then just dump those onto Amazon Prime at various different points and say, hey, we've flooded your system now with all of this extra stuff, which is, a good move from them.
I suppose it's all about options, isn't it?
And yeah, it gives them a wider library for people to choose from, which means that, if they ever sort the user interface out on the Amazon Prime app, then things will hopefully get better. But yeah, I think, in a world where we're seeing sort of Sony is trying to position themselves as the only one who don't have a streaming service and they're going to be for the filmmakers or whatever, it means that Amazon are going to be, at least it looks like, keeping up to date and keeping up to speed with Disney Plus in terms of being able to offer something that, well, I suppose Netflix is a better comparison because it's not just limited to one studio, but, it feels like it's trying to at least make sure that it remains in that top 2 or 3 of streamers, which I think it will do. I mean, the benefit of it is that anyone who's got Amazon Prime for package delivery then gets Amazon Prime Video thrown in for free. So, you've got an audience there who may not even use it, but you can count them towards the subscriber base. So, it kind of lends them a few different things in terms of, just being able to say, hey, we've got a huge amount of stuff here. Yeah. I mean, it pales in comparison to, say, Disney taking on Fox, which was, 70 billion, wasn't it? But it's, it's a completely different kettle of fish where you're taking on a catalogue rather than taking on your catalogue and also all of these other things that they've already paid for. Whereas with this, it's just a case of they can be the ones who produce the James Bond movies through MGM. So, I mean, they've said they're going to be keeping the MGM brand, so that's probably a good thing, I suppose. So that is that. Okay, trailer roundup. So, we've got, 10 trailers, maybe even more than that.
Yes.
So what we'll do is we'll do maybe just a speed round. I don't know. If you feel like we need to talk about them more, then you can talk about them more. We'll see. So let's start off. Snake Eyes. This is G.I. Joe?
Yeah, it was like a 59-second teaser trailer or something like that.
Okay, tell me about it. What's going on?
Well, G.I. Joe Snake Eyes is interesting because Snake Eyes is a character that wears a mask and doesn't speak and is a really good ninja. And they've got really handsome Henry Golding speaking as this character. And I guess it's an origin story, but if this doesn't end with him going, and I will never show my face and talk again, then it's an absolute waste. It looks alright. There's a bit of him fighting people on top of a car, which looks pretty cool. I don't know. I was never a huge G.I. Joe guy. I think it's more of an American property. So I never got into it. But the trailer looks like it could be fun.
Okay.
If I remember rightly, G.I. Joe and the Rise of Cobra, I think, is the second one. They're all right.
I thought G.I. Joe Retaliation. I mean, it's been 10 years since those now, probably.
Probably since I've seen them.
Okay, so that is out in this year?
This year, yeah, July 29th, I think.
Okay. Next up, Dear Evan Hansen. This is based on the musical.
Yeah. So
okay, moving on. I don't have anything else to say necessarily.
So it's a story of a kid at school who basically is going to his therapist and is encouraged to write letters to himself. Somebody gets his letter, runs off of it, and then that person commits suicide. And he's found with a letter written to saying Dear Evan Hansen.
Yeah.
And it's believed that he wrote it for Evan Hansen despite being Evan Hansen's letter. Kind of a case of mistaken identities, but then also opening up into this story of, actually, is there more to life? And things like that. what's interesting is they've taken the guy who played the role on stage, and he's playing it in here, and despite probably being older than the role should be, it looks like it could work, and I think that's going to be beneficial to kind of getting the success of a stage version onto screen. I've never seen this. I don't know any of the songs or anything like that from it, but I'm actually kind of looking forward to it because A, I love a good musical, and B, I didn't know what the story was, and actually seeing the trailer made me go, it's a really interesting idea.
Yeah.
And does it land? And it seems people love the stage version, and maybe.
Let's do a couple of shorties. Jungle Cruise had another trailer.
Jack Whitehall actually speaks in this one.
Did he not speak in the last one?
No, because they were like, oh, it's an openly gay character, and then he has no lines.
He spoke in the teaser, didn't he? The first trailer in June last year.
My favourite thing from this, in the poster, it looks like Giamatti's going to be absolutely hamming this up. And also Jesse Plemons looks like he's having a lot of fun.
My favourite thing about it is when she kicks the thing and it starts the engine, and that's fun. Because she was right. Old. Another trailer for Old. Okay. So this is the M. Night Shyamalan Magic Beach.
Yeah, so it's like, oh, it's a beach, but it makes everyone old. I feel like this trailer maybe gives away too much.
What if the twist is none of this is a twist, and the twist is yet to come?
Well, this thing, I also know
it actually makes you a baby.
And he feels like he has to have a twist in it. And actually, I think if the trailer ended with the fact that, it's just a beach that makes people old, that's an interesting enough idea to have got people through the doors knowing it's a Shyamalan film. But I think the trailer goes past that point to a point where it starts to show too much. And I think it would be a more enjoyable film if it didn't. But yeah.
Okay.
Interesting idea. I don't know if I'll see it.
Werewolves Within, based on the video game.
So I didn't know there's a video game for werewolves. So Werewolves is that party game where you all sit around, one of you's a werewolf who has to slowly kill off the other players, and the rest of the people are the townspeople, some with special skills, trying to decide who in the room is the werewolf. It's like Mafia, it's like Town of Salem, it's like all those kind of games. I didn't realize there's a video game of it, and that's what this is based on.
Yeah.
It could be fun. It's one of those films that I see as like a concept film.
Yeah.
Where somebody goes, oh, here's a really cool concept. We do a film that's based on that werewolves game. And a lot of those films don't stick the landing.
Yeah.
Now, the interesting thing is, so you said that you saw the film of, so the director is Josh Rubin.
I saw Scare Me last year, which I thought was pretty poor, but I mean, the thing is, I understand that the premise of Scare Me was it's ultra low budget and it's two people in a room together, basically. But I couldn't shake the fact that I just felt like it just was so generic in terms of what it was trying to do. This, I mean, the problem with this is, from the trailer, it kind of looks like it's going to take on a broadly comedic but with some sort of horror elements tone, which is exactly the same thing that Scare Me tried to do, which was done far better in The Wolf of Snow Hollow last year. And if you're going to be a werewolf movie, and I get that this may not be a werewolf movie because there may not actually be a werewolf in it, because that will probably be the twist of it all, is that they were not all werewolves, none of them were, and nothing's bad. If you're going to do that, then you need to do something really inventive with it. And I feel like The Wolf of Snow Hollow did that, because it's a movie that is ostensibly not about werewolves, despite being about a werewolf. This looks, fairly throwaway. I'm sure it will be, but hey, maybe I'll see it.
It could be fun.
It could be fun. Escape Room 2, Tournament of Champions. This is a movie. So I saw Escape Room 1 in 2019. It made shit tons of money compared to its budget, and therefore was always going to get a sequel. In fact, I think it was greenlit for a sequel the week it came out.
Yeah.
Because I think it ended up maybe tripling its budget within its opening weekend. I mean, first one...
More escape rooms.
I'll tell you now, the first one was nonsense. There was some interesting visual stuff in it, maybe.
Yeah.
But that's kind of the limit of its creativity. This looks like it's going to maybe be exactly the same, where some of the rooms are interesting designs or whatever, but actually there's nothing exciting here. I mean, the problem is, when you know that the setup of escape room is basically people are put into an escape room, but people actually don't make it out. That's kind of it. And when you've got that as your setup, and then it's just like, okay, and now the ones who survive that are now having to go into another escape room.
It has a great line in the trailer. One of my favourite lines in any trailer, where he's like, "What are we? Some kind of tournament of champions?"
So it's set up in the first one for the sequel.
Yeah.
And I kind of feel like the setup for the sequel is not how this sequel looks like it's going. So I'm wondering if they just forgot that they tried to set it up for a sequel.
Probably.
But, look, I'm sure it'll be fine, and I'm sure it will make loads of money, and I'm sure it'll be as forgettable as the first one was.
Another trailer that I feel gives a lot away, though.
Yeah, but then again, I don't know what trailer could you make for Escape Room 2 that doesn't give away, like, just have them on a train and then go,
escaping again.
I hope this doesn't turn into some kind of Escape Room 2 Tournament of Champions. Right. What else have we got? The Tomorrow War. Lots of aliens from the future. Maybe they're ghosts.
So, yeah. Do we explain like how you know that?
Right. So this movie I only know about the existence of because one of the hosts of a podcast I listen to is in it and has talked about being in it and was filming in it and recording the podcast at the same time. So I knew that originally it was called Ghost Draft, which Chris Pratt, the star and executive producer of this movie, has now said, oh, well, it turned out to be problematic for a number of reasons. Not quite sure what that means, but we'll find out, I'm sure, one day.
Murdering ghosts is bad.
Or that maybe not everyone in the world believes in ghosts, but everyone believes in aliens.
Yeah.
So essentially, the setup for this seems to be that there is a future war going on between humans and aliens, and there is some kind of time jump ability that some people have, maybe, or some people have maybe a gene that allows them, like, they get drafted up.
Yeah.
And I think certain ones are maybe able to make it through because it doesn't make sense that the people they send through are the people they send through unless they have to. And
so they're taking people from the past to the future to fight that war.
Because they've run out of people in the future to fight the war.
Yeah. So it's kind of messing with time, but also fighting aliens. Great line in this trailer is Chris Pratt's character goes, I just came here to save my daughter, and if I have to save the world to save her, then so be it.
Yeah.
Which I love.
I feel like this is yet another step in Chris Pratt trying to make himself, the action star du jour. And, fair enough, he's been in a lot of big action movies. He'll continue to be in a lot of big action movies.
He's making his money while the sun is shining.
Yeah,
why not?
And the thing is, he's obviously, I don't think he needs to make this movie because he's in Jurassic World 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, however long they keep that going for, and whatever other franchise he's attached to. Lego Movie. Although, will there be a third? Probably not.
And Guardians.
Oh, and Guardians. But that's winding down after the third, right? Or Dave Bautista's leaving
Dave
after the
Bautista's
third.
leaving, and so is maybe James Gunn.
But anyway, look, he's making his money.
Yeah.
Fair enough. This looks like it's just sci-fi action.
Yeah.
It looks fairly generic.
There was nothing in this trailer that I thought looked exciting.
Yeah.
Like, sometimes you'll see an action trailer and you go, oh, that's pretty cool. I kind of like that. It all seemed very generic and very bland. I will watch it because, of course, I will.
Well, because it's on Amazon Prime, so you don't have to leave the house for it. That's kind of the reason. There's another one that the Paramount had to offload during the pandemic last year. So I think that's out in July.
Yeah.
Right, what else have we got? I'm just trying to go to the next one. We'll end on a couple of ones that you might want to talk more on. So, Infinite. This is dropping on Paramount Plus in the US in like a week.
Yeah.
And I'm presuming is going to get a cinema release here at some point in the future.
So this is Mark Wahlberg is a man who lives through time. He keeps getting reincarnated and is maybe some kind of spy or something.
Yeah, and this is directed by Antoine Fuqua, who's obviously got, heritage in terms of directing action-y stuff, with dynamic lead roles.
And I'm going to be honest, that's the only reason why I'm interested in this. I watched that trailer and it is a bad trailer.
Yeah.
And the problem is as well is, I don't know how long this film's been in production or anything, but The Old Guard came out last year and basically did the same thing, except it didn't do it with reincarnation, it just did it with these people live forever.
I think this movie was scheduled to come out in July last year, maybe?
Yeah.
It's one of the ones that Paramount didn't sell during the pandemic, but kept hold of.
So yeah, and
but have now decided to just drop it onto Paramount Plus rather than giving it a theatrical run as well. So I don't know if that's just to sort of juke up the subscriber numbers.
maybe.
I would guess that, similar to when when HBO launched thingy, they kind of went, well, what if we just do Justice League there?
Yeah.
And this will drive people to Paramount. It's got Mark Wahlberg
People
in
love
it.
Mark Wahlberg.
And people like Antoine Fuqua.
And like I said, the only reason I'd be interested is to see kind of whether it does do anything interesting, because it's another trailer where I feel like it doesn't do anything interesting in that trailer.
Yeah.
And a lot of that trailer is setting up the concept and not really giving us much else.
Yeah. Gunpowder Milkshake.
So this is Karen Gillan
Yeah.
as a hit woman
Yeah.
who basically then has to turn on the people employing her. It's another one in that long line of John Wick was successful, so we're going to do this with every actor now at some point. It looks like it could be fun. Like, the one thing I got from the trailer is like, this could be a fun version. It doesn't look as serious as some of the others, and it definitely has a kind of pop to it. I think it could work, but it's one of those that, like, these films, once again, very few and far between do they work.
I mean, I'd say that from the things I've seen of it now, it kind of feels like it's just very generic in terms of what it's trying to be, because it clearly is inspired by John Wick and things like that, and obviously Atomic Blonde then went on to do that.
John Wick has a lot to answer to for what happened to cinema.
But then also,
action.
it's got the exact same colour palette as Atomic Blonde seemed to have in all of its marketing, and things like Hotel Artemis tried to do as well as Harley Quinn, Birds of Prey last year. And I'm so done with that, because it just looks like this looks as forgettable as the last 5 films we've mentioned to me.
And the interesting thing about that is, in a trailer, it is really easy to do that style, and it looked really kind of invigorating and kind of sells something that's more fun. When you try and transpose that into an actual film, then keeping that tone and keeping that style is incredibly hard. And a lot of them don't do it. Look at some of those examples you just gave. Hotel Artemis is not that kind of film.
Yeah.
Birds of Prey has its moments, but it doesn't keep it up for the entire thing because it's so hard to do that you kind of exhaust yourself or you exhaust the audience. I will watch this.
I probably won't. In fact, I definitely won't. But, fine.
I will watch it. And I hope it proves itself to be fun.
Yeah. Last Night in Soho.
Oh yeah, there's still more.
We're getting towards the end. This is the one of 2 to finish off. So this is the new Edgar Wright film that was originally scheduled for maybe September last year, I think, and then got pushed a couple of times because I think it was then scheduled for March this year, and is now September, October time, I believe.
Yeah.
So Thomasin McKenzie and Anya Taylor-Joy starring in this psychological thriller involving time jumping as well. So
is it a horror film as well?
It's a psychological thriller is how it's described at the moment, but I guess you will, it will be seen. I mean, there's things that I find very dubious about the trailer that I think point in the wrong direction if it is going. Like
what?
I've got reservations towards the end of the trailer. It definitely goes a bit things that go bump in the nighty, and if it goes in that direction, I think that I'm kind of like, okay, I'm massively less interested in this if it's just going to turn into one of those. I have more faith in them making something that isn't that.
Yeah.
But the trailers for Edgar Wright films usually are very indicative of your finished product. It's not like I can't think of any of his films that have been misrepresented by a trailer. If that's the case, then I think there is maybe 50% of this movie that I will really like, and then 50% that I think will be a massive letdown if it follows the trailer. So I'm cautiously optimistic, I would say. But I'm still just holding it in reserve that, I'm hoping it doesn't turn into what it looked like it might.
Yeah, it's another one of those where, like, I'm very interested in this because of the director. Because I think that he does stuff that's incredibly interesting visually, in a way of putting stuff across. I think that might be why I'm more into it. But yeah, I don't know how I feel about the actual film, if that makes sense. Like, whether I'm actually kind of excited by the idea of it. But it might be one of those when I sit down to watch it, I go, actually, yeah, this is pretty much exactly what I want.
Yeah, I mean, good creative team behind it, so the signs are good, I would say, in terms of that. But I think I'm just slightly worried about the trailer, but I'm sure that those doubts will be ill-founded. Finally, then, before we move on to the reviews,
trying to think which one we've missed.
Eternals.
Oh, that one.
Maybe the biggest of them all, certainly in terms of budget. So, Eternals. This is the not the next and not the next, but the third next entry into the MCU.
Yeah.
So this is coming out in November. I think tail end of November, is it? Or is it the 4th?
Sounds about right.
It's either the tail end or the 4th.
November.
It's November this year. Directed by Chloe Zhao, who obviously just won Best Director and Best Picture for
Interesting that, like,
Nomadland.
She isn't mentioned at all in the trailer. And
Is she not? I thought it said from the visionary director Chloe Zhao.
I might be wrong, but I thought she wasn't.
Oh, I thought she was. Well, there we are. We've both seen a different trailer. I saw the trailer for Nomadland. So this is a collection of immortal beings who have watched Earth for thousands of years,
but not got involved
because it's not their place, and now decided that it is their place because a threat is coming.
Yeah, and I
mean, Thanos was a threat.
I know nothing about
the Chitauri were a threat. Loki was a threat.
Well, this is the thing. Like, this is the big question of, like, why did they never get involved if all these things were happening?
They were snapped out of existence in Endgame.
Maybe, but all of them?
Yeah, well, it's only 50% of all things, but it's not like 50% of anyone in one room, is it?
But
they might just all have been very unlucky to be in the 50%.
But so the interesting thing is, so they'll be fighting, the Eternals fight something called deviants. And Thanos is a deviant.
Yes.
He is one of them. So, if Thanos is collecting these great stones of power...
Wouldn't you be concerned about this?
Yeah.
But will you retcon it in the movie universe to make it so that he's not actually a deviant, he's something different?
Maybe.
I mean, you wouldn't put it past them if it helps them explain away why they didn't get involved, right? If their sworn enemy is up to no good and they go, it's probably fine. We've always been worried about them, but on this occasion we'll let it slide.
So interesting. Like, I didn't know anything about it. I kind of found a thread online about who each of the Eternals are. That's on our Twitter page at Dinosaur115. If you're interested to know who each one of them are, what their powers are and stuff. A couple of really interesting ones, like so Kumail Nanjiani is playing a character who basically, after coming to Earth, because they come to Earth and they kind of integrate themselves into society, he basically repositioned himself to be a Bollywood star, and kind of just got addicted to the fame. And then Barry, whatever his name is,
Keaton,
is one who's shut himself off completely, and kind of hates being there. I think there's some really interesting stuff.
Will he be the baddie? Probably.
maybe because we don't know who it is, but the interesting thing about this film is, so there's a few things. Firstly, I think it looks stunning, visually. People are like, "Oh, where are the big CGI fights?" It doesn't matter. Look at how it looks like. 2, I have no idea what's going on. I have no idea about the characters. I have no idea about the plot or anything like that.
Yeah.
And third is, you have a lot of moving parts in this film. There are a lot of people involved, a lot of characters that you're going to have to get across. Because if it is a case of, here are your Eternals and they are fighting your Deviants who we haven't even seen, you're going to have to explain who all the Eternals are, why they're here, why they haven't been involved, what they can do, and kind of what they are in the whole grand scheme of things. And then the villains and their motives and everything like that. And you've got like 2 hours and a bit hours to do this in. That seems like a lot. But I'm also kind of intrigued.
Well, this movie came about because Kevin Feige decided that it was better financially if they started doing more team-up sort of ensemble movies that weren't team-ups.
Yeah.
Because of the success of Guardians of the Galaxy. So he decided to push ahead with things like this because it was more financially sound for them to do this, because you can spin these characters then off into their own solo things if you need to.
Yeah.
And separate them out. And then also integrate them into the Avengers-type movies if you want to as well. But this was seen as like a jumping-off point for all of these characters to then establish themselves as individual components within the universe as well.
And there's absolutely some interesting ones, like even like Kit Harington's playing a character called Black Knight, who is really interesting and kind of opens up a door to kind of like, what about all these British superheroes that exist? Yeah, it's one of those I'm like, I've seen it and the trailer made me go, oh, that looks pretty, but I have no idea what this is.
And you will be reporting on this for us.
Yeah.
In November.
And like I said, there's a couple of things on Twitter that I've kind of retweeted about kind of who these people are. So if you are interested in more details, go there.
Okay, moving on. Reviews.
Yes.
Jesus.
That was a lot of trailers.
Yeah, too many. Maybe we shouldn't have reported on them all.
It's almost like, because cinemas are now reopened, especially over here, like, just like, get everything out now.
Sure. Remind
people cinema exists.
Absolutely. Right, so reviews. I'll start with one of mine that I can just sort of chuck away quickly. So, The Reckoning, which is on Shudder now, directed by Neil Marshall, based on Red Hex, which is a story by Edward Evers Swindle, and then adapted by Neil Marshall and Charlotte Kirk. So the story of a young woman who, during the Black Death, her husband passes away, and she is then accused of witchcraft and tried as a witch. So it's a horror, and, you know, it's a period horror that sort of tries to... I mean, I feel like it tries to touch on slightly different stuff to, say, The Witch, in terms of what that did. That is by no means a comparison. This is not in the same ballpark as The Witch. And it's a shame, really, because Neil Marshall is a director who is capable of greatness, because I think that, you know, The Descent is one of the 21st century's really great horror movies.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, things like Hellboy and this kind of sour the reputation slightly. I mean, it's one of those films where, you know, there's one point where people are drinking in ye old pub, and they start discussing this woman and saying, oh yeah, and I saw her doing this, and and isn't it strange how she always does this thing, and we don't really know that much about her if you think about it, and her husband's died, so she must be a witch. And then the guy turns around and goes, did somebody say witch? And you just think, oh my god, it's got one of those creaking scripts. Sean Pertwee crops up as a sort of witchfinder general who's got some attachment to her in her past. And it's just one of those movies where you go, I don't really understand what you think you're trying to do here.
Yeah.
Because it's not a horror movie that scares in any way, there's some sort of devil stuff that comes into it that sort of, on a visual level, could have been interesting but isn't. Mm-hmm. And then on a purely on a plot level, it is just a mess. It's all over the place. The script is pretty creaking, and it's a shame because it's one of those things where you go, how badly have you fallen from grace in terms of your, he's someone who's won Emmys for directing Game of Thrones. He did Battle of the Bastards and a few others of sort of well-regarded series, and you kind of go, this is so below par for you.
Yeah.
But maybe this is the new par. I don't know. It's on Shudder if you want to watch it, but I honestly would not recommend this.
Okay.
Right. What should we do next?
I can tell you about Love, Death and Robots pretty quickly.
Oh, shoot. Yeah. Sorry.
I'll tell you about it really quickly. So it's the second series of Love, Death and Robots, which is basically a anthology series of animated episodes. All of them are basically based in some kind of future tech, so they all involve some kind of robots and stuff like that. So it's only 8 episodes this time, which is a shame because the first one was like 20 episodes of varying length, where some of them are like 3 minutes, some of them are like 25. And I think that really kind of added to the anthology of you never know what to expect. This seemed a bit more kind of uniform in kind of length.
So are they all the same length now?
No, they are different.
Okay.
But they're all around about the same.
Okay.
Some of them are really good. But I found one of the more frustrating things, there are outliers to this, but there's a lot of similar animation in here. And that's not taken away from the wonderful animation that's in here. There's some of them that like you see it and you're like, how is that just not a human performance? I cannot believe that. It's a lot of motion capture. But there's like 3 of them that I can think of off the top of my head, which have almost the exact same animation style, which is kind of like heavily CGI, really realistic stuff. And the fact that like there's 3 out of 8, so you're almost at your 50% of them are the same.
Yeah.
Is really gutting because the first one, it was all over the place.
Yeah.
Like there was so many different styles in there. And it made it kind of really pop as a series of being like, oh, I've got 20 episodes and I don't know what I'm getting from one to the next.
Yes.
There's one story in here that I think was really great. And I went, oh, I would watch an entire film of this.
Yeah.
Like, the premise they have in there is great. And it being... So they're all based on short stories, I believe. And it being quite shortened and you kind of get into that ending, I think is really well done. But I would love to get like an hour and a half of that. Like, it sets up so much. It's just really cool. But I think there's only one in there that made me feel that. Okay. Like, that's a shame. They just didn't seem to kind of fit the same kind of mold.
I mean, what, the first series came out in 2019, maybe? So do you feel like this was just a case of they were already in production on series 2 of it and they kind of went, well, let's just get this out as soon as possible and... But a limited run in terms of the episode kind of doesn't make sense if you've got something that's...
Don't get me wrong, like, there's some like that look great. And, there's one with Michael B. Jordan at the end. It's really kind of visually stunning. Like, it's... I couldn't believe it. It's not him. Like, the motion capture is that good. But there wasn't that much variation. So, for example, in the first series, there is one... which is basically it's almost kind of like hand-drawn, it was kind of like a mixture between A Scanner Darkly and, I want to say like Ghibli. Like, it was this really weird mix, and it was basically just 2 guys who were out on the road, and at night, the sky lights up with these kind of aliens that are basically like creatures that kind of go in the air, and it's kind of like this dream kind of Fantasia-like sequence. And I know a lot of people who really hated that episode. Yeah. I loved it. But that was what was great, because there was so much variation. You could have those different emotions. And this just didn't have it. I think there is one episode that is great, which is about halfway through. But the rest felt a little bit flat.
So would you say to someone who hasn't watched any of it, to start with the first series.
Absolutely. Like, there's some really great ones.
Rather than just jumping in at the second.
And I think, there will be a third series, and I think there will be ones that are great, and I kind of hope they go for... I want them to go back to longer length and varying...
It's always the risk you take, I think, with an anthology... Not an anthology, but you know what I mean? A sort of collection like that, in the same way that, say... second series of Creepshow's just come out on Shudder recently, and that's a similar situation where you get 2 episodes in each episode, apart from the last one, which is just like a longer version of... It was very strange the way they tried to do it this time. And you might get one that's really good and really gets it, and then one that's just like... But you kind of like... Well, I want to like the episode more, but because both of them are sandwiched together, I kind of go, on the whole, that wasn't a great episode or whatever. Or that during the course of the series, you go, there were probably more episodes that made me feel, whatever, than there were that went, this is great. This is exactly the mood that Creepshow is going for. And I think it's always the risk you take with something like that, is that you just never know what kind of quality you're going to get. But particularly if you feel like it becomes a bit samey in terms of its animation style compared to the first one. And I guess it's more noticeable when it's only 8.
And I think it's partially because of the fact that, like, animation's come on so far, even in the last 2 years, that, like, this style of kind of really realistic animation, it kind of really shows what you can do as a studio, and because there are so many different studios doing it, it kind of really shows off what you can do, which then causes the concern that you go, okay, but then you're all looking like that. And don't get me wrong, one of these realistic ones is the one that I love. So, it's not a bad thing. It's just, I kind of wish there was more kind of like anime and that kind of style of things, because I just don't think there's enough. But yeah, I would still recommend the series as a whole. Like, it's, especially that first one, there's a lot to enjoy.
Briefly, you've watched 2 episodes then of
M.O.D.O.K.
M.O.D.O.K minute. You've got to fill a minute now.
Enjoy it enough. It's definitely kind of, it's animation for adults. Stop motion was really cool. The way it's done.
Is it all stop motion?
Mostly, yeah.
Okay.
So that's really cool, really different. The problem it's got, though, is it seems like it's trying too hard at times. And it's trying to kind of fill the niche that the Harley Quinn TV series fills.
Oh, okay.
Of this kind of like, this is superhero stuff, but it's for adults. And Harley Quinn does it superbly.
But there is going to be an Avengers crossover where he's in the next Avengers movie, right?
Yes,
M.O.D.O.K?
I think so.
Okay, cool. And he's going to be stop motion.
But, there are some really good people in here, and there are moments that are funny, but there's a lot of moments where I'm like, I saw that coming, and you're trying definitely too hard.
And this is on Disney Plus?
Yeah. So it's 2 episodes.
Part of Star, I'm guessing.
Yes, it's 2 episodes here. In certain territories, it's already all out. If you've got Hulu, I think it's already all out.
In the States it's a Hulu thing, isn't it? Yeah.
So yeah, it's weekly here. It's all out somewhere else.
Moving on. I'll do another film now. Sorry, I forgot about the TV stuff.
It's okay.
I genuinely just looked at my thing and I went, well, I've only got 4 movies up here, so let's move on with these. It's fine. So I'll start with the Human Factor, which is a documentary that basically details the American role in the attempts to find a Middle East peace process, basically. Largely focused on it all coming to a head during the presidency of Bill Clinton. And it's told from the American perspective, from the American negotiators who are actually in the room doing the negotiations with Yasser Arafat and the various leaders of Israel throughout the years. It's a really, really fascinating documentary. What I think is important is that it always feels balanced. And it never feels like it's going one way or the other and saying this side is in the right, this side is in the wrong. It's always saying, from our perspective as the negotiators, you had to be able to understand both sides of what was at stake here.
Yeah.
And it talks about the actual process of negotiation a lot. It talks about what you have to take into account while you're negotiating, and what you as a negotiator have to understand about the fact that both sides are particularly in a conflict like this where there is one side that is gaining a lot more than the other one is gaining, and the other one will be seen to be weakened as a result. And it does feel like it argues that really well in terms of being able to put you in that perspective of, oh, okay, I can see how this, and no one would ever try and say that the situation in the Middle East is anything but very complicated.
Yeah.
And it starts off by explaining, what you have to understand is that a lot of people, when they go into a negotiating room, are trying to find something that works for the future and say, well, the future is a new day and that's what we're going to focus on. But actually, everything is about the past and everything is tied up in what has happened previously to that point. It's brilliant. I really, really love this. And I found myself really engrossed, in tears at points. And what it never tries to do is it never tries to proffer a solution. It never tries to argue, here is how you can solve the Middle East, because that's something that just isn't possible. And as we've seen recently, this is still something that is miles away from finding any kind of resolution. And the documentary never tries to argue, here is your resolution to this conflict. It tries to argue, this is how it was, and this is how it will be, and probably will be for a long time. And it sort of ends on a note of, you can take it one way or you can take it another, but who's to say which is the right way to go with this? Who's to say that this way is going to result in the resolution that everyone is happy with, especially in a situation where it's so difficult to find a resolution that anyone is happy with. So that is available so it is in cinemas now, as well as being available so it's distributed through Dogwoof, who are a really great documentary distribution company, actually. And they are, so I watched it through an on-demand service through our local independent cinema. So you may well find, if you search, if you search for virtual screenings, The Human Factor, it will come up with the various cinemas they're doing it through. And even if it's not one close to you, you can still buy a ticket through another one. But you're going to be lining the pockets of both Dogwoof, the makers of the movie as well, and also a local cinema. And it will be an independent one as far as I can tell. So that's a good thing as well. So yeah, I would recommend that is available now. Should we do Army of the Dead and then I'll finish on what I saw yesterday? So Army of the Dead, Netflix big release last week. Zack Snyder's latest movie. Zombies have happened. And a blowjob causes zombies.
That's actually true.
Kind of
I
true.
forgot that's the cause.
Well, okay, it doesn't cause zombies, but it causes the zombie outbreak.
Yeah.
In true Zack Snyder style, of course a blowjob causes zombies.
So zombies have taken over Vegas. Vegas gets walled up.
Yeah, as a sort of containment measure, they wall up Vegas, and it is seen as sort of a no-go zone.
And then Dave Bautista is approached to go and break into a safe that holds 300 million. 200 million. Is it 200 million?
200. I checked because we had this conversation the other day. We couldn't remember how much it had.
50 million will go to Dave and his team to split however he wants. The rest goes to this guy.
The guy who owns the casino.
Yeah, who owns the safe that needs to be broken into.
Mm-hmm. A lot of it doesn't make sense.
And then they go and they do a mission.
Mm-hmm. Because there is a strict time limit on this, because they're planning on nuking Vegas to get rid of the zombies. So, that's your story. Look, I mean, the opening credit sequence is a Zack Snyder opening credit sequence in exactly the same way as every other Zack Snyder film manages to do. A lot of slow-mo.
Yeah, but it's also the most interesting part of the film. Because I said this on Twitter, so this film's set in Vegas, right?
Mm-hmm.
But at no point does it need to be set in Vegas. Mm-hmm. Because this setting never provides anything interesting to this film. Mm-hmm. It doesn't seem to be... so the best films use its location as a character.
Yeah.
And Vegas is just a city in this. It's nothing special about it. Mm-hmm. And actually, the more interesting stuff for me is the stuff that was in the opening credits, which is the downfall of Vegas, of this city where, you know, money and greed is a virus, being attacked by the virus of the zombie outbreak.
Yeah.
And actually, that's the more interesting story, and I would much rather have seen that film than what they've given me. Because the problem is, this film then becomes bland by the numbers zombie flick.
So my problem, and whilst I can take your point, what I feel is, number one, I feel like a zombie outbreak movie is very difficult to do because it becomes so samey immediately, even in a city where you've got a interesting dynamic in terms of how it's set up, particularly because Vegas is glitz and glamour and all this debauchery going on. I feel like that movie then gets tired after 5 minutes, and it's difficult. The thing that zombie movies have always been better at doing is being about the aftermath and living with that world, because it gives you more exploration options in terms of interesting things that your characters can be doing and the characters you can introduce, rather than just people shooting zombies for the sake of shooting zombies, which in our heart of hearts we all know that Zack Snyder would love to do again.
I think the problem is as well is, so zombie movies are good at being not about zombies.
Yeah.
And the way you spin a Vegas one is about commercialism. And there's already been zombie films that do that much better.
Yeah, but there's also been non-zombie films that have done that in Vegas much better. Leprechaun 3. And I'm being serious when I say that is a better Vegas horror movie.
Yeah.
And it's not a horror movie, it's a comedy, basically. But neither's this. This is not a horror movie in the slightest. So my issues with this are a couple. Number one, I think it's further proof that Zack Snyder just cannot write, because the script is clunkingly bad. Number two, it's neither a zombie movie nor a heist movie. It tries to do both and then does neither. And the thing is, I feel like a movie like this then just blends into the background of being just a generic zombie movie from the 21st century.
It does everything that you would expect it to.
And the issue that I've got is, when you get great zombie movies, they really stand out now. Things like Girl with All the Gifts stands out as being a great example of that. Something like 28 Days Later stands out as being a great example of that, and of course is the thing that inspired Zack Snyder to do fast zombies. And the issue that this has is that it never tries to necessarily do anything that is different.
Yeah.
It follows exactly the same plot formula as every single sort of zombie ticking timer movie that you've ever seen. And it fails, I think, on every level to be interesting.
Yeah, but then you even look at how the film looks.
Yeah.
Like, visually, it's fairly bland. For being in the city of glitz and glamour, and, you know, those trailers have been like, and those shots being like, oh, here's your neon kind of Vegas. It's very bland.
Yeah.
I think some of the horror, like the gore aspects of it, I think there's only one moment. You know me, I'm a little pansy boy.
Yeah.
I don't like gore. There's only one bit that made me kind of wince.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Well, the thing is, something like The Walking Dead does a much better job of doing practical effects better, and that's because you've got someone like Greg Nicotero behind it who's doing those effects and is really, really committed to his craft. This just feels like they've kind of got... I mean, the zombies genuinely do look like ghosts of Mars. But they also have this thing where it just feels like so much of it feels so digital. The whole movie feels digital. But then when it comes to the gore aspect and the actual decaying stuff, it kind of feels like nothing's really real here, and I don't feel attached to anything. And, I mean, it's really difficult to feel positive about a movie where you go... Okay, I think all of the characters here are horrible in a way that Zack Snyder can do like no other. But they're not, you know, they're not likable anti-heroes. They're unlikable anti-heroes who you end up rooting for the zombies in a zombie movie. You've got problems with your survivors, right?
When the one moment of warmth comes from a zombie.
And I think the problem I've got with it is it clearly shows that, Netflix have put a lot of money behind this, and they've bought into... I mean, this movie was not a cheap movie to make, and now there's a second movie being made, as well as a prequel... a prequel movie being made, as well as a spin-off anime TV series. So this is something where they've put down money on the table and said, right, we're going to commit to this as a franchise before the first installment's out. That's how strongly we feel that this is going to be and I'm sure loads of people will watch it, and I'm sure people will enjoy it.
Yeah.
And look, Zack Snyder is someone who now has this unassailable fan base where any of his projects can succeed on the back of him being perceived as the victim in the Warner Brothers issues. And now that Netflix have got hold of him, they're saying, well, how many of these do you want to make, Zack?
Yeah.
Oh, as many as I want. Yes, I'll do it. That kind of feels like, oh, okay, well, the quality still has to be there. And I just don't think it is. I will, this is completely ignoring the fact that the film is also 2.5 hours long when it could easily be 90 minutes.
And it's ugly.
Because it's trying to tell 60 minutes of story.
Yes.
Across, 150. And it's just like, this is nowhere near the best zombie movie I've seen this year, let alone, and that's only because I've rewatched his Dawn of the Dead movie this year. So, when your best zombie movie is 20 years ago, and you're still making them now, maybe go back to what, that one at least had an idea of a sense of fun about itself, and knew that it was a big, stupid action movie more than it was a horror movie. This doesn't do either of those things.
Yeah.
It has no personality to it.
No. And the thing I just wanted to mention, because obviously it's a big thing to notice in this film, is that its focus aspect is all over the place, where it fuzzes out half the screen to put your focus in certain other places.
Yeah.
And this is like an intentional thing he did to kind of help you guide your eyes to where the action is, sort of thing. And some people like it because apparently it makes it seem more claustrophobic and stuff. I know a lot of people who really don't like it, and I know some people who got migraines because of it.
Yeah.
I really don't like it. I think it makes the film look ugly.
Yeah.
One of the things it does probably help with, though, which is the one I will give this film a positive, is something that I said at the time. So Tig Notaro is in this movie as the helicopter pilot, and she replaced a person who is a bad person.
Yeah.
Who did bad things and was replaced. But she never met a single cast member. So she was put in digitally afterwards. And if you know that, you notice it. But actually, I think it's done fairly all right. Like, I think they've done a good job of putting somebody who isn't in there at any point in the film. And I think credit to them for going through that effort and actually picking a more interesting casting choice. And putting it in effectively where it doesn't absolutely ruin it because you're like, oh no, I obviously can tell this. That has to be applauded. But I do think that, like, visually it is an ugly film.
Yeah, I totally agree.
I do not recommend.
No, would not recommend. Okay, finally then. So, A Quiet Place Part 2, which is out in the States, I believe, already, but is out here, I think, next week, maybe the 3rd of June.
Yeah.
So this is the follow-up to 2019's.
Sounds about right.
A Quiet Place? Yeah, that's about right. Yeah. 2019's A Quiet Place. This one, John Krasinski returns to direct and now has sole writing credit on the film, rather than taking the characters and the script that had originally been done and then, I think, tweaking it in the first one. Returning cast members, Emily Blunt, Millicent Simmons, and Noah Jupe return, and we're introduced to some new characters along the way. So this picks up directly after the closing shot of A Quiet Place Part 1. And I think that's the title, A Quiet Place Part 2, is the correct title for this. It's not A Quiet Place 2, because it is not a second film. It feels more like it is a continuation of that first film. And I think first of all, that I think that's good because it kind of it allows you to not have to confront a few different questions that might come up if you then said 6 months have passed or a year has passed. Instead, picking it but directly after the action of the first film ends is a really smart choice because you have this platform to build on, and you have very key. You understand why your characters are the way they are because they have just come out of this very harrowing experience in their own home. So it opens with a prequel, essentially. It opens up with this flashback to the first day of the aliens arriving, and sort of shows you that for, I don't know, maybe 5-10 minutes. And then the rest of the action then just picks up from the end of that first film. And I think it's the sort of prequel, the prologue thing works really well in terms of just giving you a grounding for the arrival of these things, and also seeing how much your characters had changed even in that first film from where they were at the start of this invasion. And I think that's done really smartly, actually. The rest of the film also feels like it's a very natural sort of progression of the film. It's an evolution of that first film rather than trying to redo it. It at least gives you a continuation that makes sense in terms of where these characters went in their first film and where they are now and what they are trying to achieve. I think the performances are all great. Particularly, Millicent Simmons, who was a really standout star of the first one, she's also terrific here and is given large focus of the storyline is hers.
Yeah.
Cillian Murphy, who's a new addition to the cast, I think is brilliant in this as well. I think really works well in his role. And he's an actor who can, with a look, do more than he can with, than a lot of actors can do with a whole paragraph. And he gets plenty of that kind of action here. And I think it's a film that kind of... I was trepidatious about it because the first trailer, and I didn't watch the second trailer because the first trailer had put me off as much as it had, because the first trailer really emphasized a lot of action. And what I would say is that the first trailer feels like it has most of the action shots of the whole film crammed into that 2 minutes. But this film it does still have the strength of its convictions to still be quiet. It's not necessarily as quiet as that first one, but it still is able to do what that first film did and retain a lot of the DNA of that. It doesn't lose the stuff that made that first one as good as it was. Obviously, because it's not as much of a surprise, it means that you would lose some of the tension of it. But I think John Krasinski's done a really good job here of actually still managing to have moments and sequences that are tense and are able to sort of carry across some of that feeling that you had in that first film, as well as still giving you a storyline that will feel satisfying.
Yeah.
I think that they've probably left its scope to be a third if they want it to be. I'd be perfectly happy if this was the end of it, but then again, I said that at the beginning of at the end of the first one, so who knows? But it's interesting that John Krasinski only came back to this because they couldn't find another director.
Yeah,
and he went, "Well, I'll pitch you my idea for what I'd make the second one," and they went, "Yeah,
we want that."
Yeah.
So, question for you, in the kind of idea of how you watched this. So, you went back to the cinema to watch it.
Yeah.
I don't know how full it was. But does it still have the same kind of vibe as the first one where when I watched that, I felt very noticeable of any noise I made?
So this was an advanced screening, a preview screening that I went to. So it wasn't as widely attended, and it was in a huge screen. And I actually think that's the wrong environment for it. I think seeing it on a smaller cinema screen, you want the cinema sound, you want the cinema experience, but I think having it on a smaller screen where it's a bit more intimate is better.
Yeah.
Because you then get sort of drawn into it more. So so it was my first time back in the big multiplex here, Cineworld, and because I'd been back to Broadway last week to watch Sound of Metal on the big screen, which is perfect, by the way.
Yeah.
And I really haven't missed a Cineworld audience, because there were people eating Subways, there were people eating popcorn next to us, and for the first sort of 40 minutes or so, it was just incessant in one ear that I could just hear these people eating popcorn, and then over in this side I could hear this guy dropping his Subway on the floor and then picking it up and then eating it. And you kind of feel like, okay, this is really distracting. And it was irritating. And I was trying to just blank it out, but it is so difficult in a film where it is a quiet film to be able to blank that out. I didn't have anywhere near the same... It wasn't anywhere near the same reaction to the first one, where everyone was silent and people put their popcorn down and didn't eat it.
Well, the first one I saw in, you'll know what screen I'm talking about, screen 1 of Cineworld, which is a very small
perfect screen for it, yeah.
And there were people in there, but it wasn't huge amounts of people.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know whether because it was quite a close environment, it definitely is a lot more hushed. I'd be interested to see what this is like in that kind of screening, in this kind of...
Yeah, and I think, if you are going to see it, then, try and see it on a big screen if you feel comfortable to do so, if it's safe for you to do so, because I think it benefits from certainly the sound system more than anything else. But, it's impressive, because for as much as we've seen things where they've got sequels, I mentioned the Lego movie earlier, and we talked about how bad the Lego movie 2 was in comparison to the first Lego movie. This manages to really, I think, it doesn't surpass the original for me, but it really does a good job of upholding that theme and that sort of approach that first one took, and doing it justice, which I didn't think it would do from that first trailer. So I was misled by that trailer in terms of it definitely putting me off. And it turned out that, actually I think this franchise, I don't know whether I'd say it's got life in it yet after this, but I would certainly say that this is a worthy successor to it. So,
great.
Would recommend. So, that's it.
We did it.
That's all. I say that's all. I mean, I've seen how long the episode is. Don't worry, guys. As always, you can find us on Facebook and on Twitter. On Twitter, we're at DinosaurMan15. We can find us on Twitch as well, at DinosaurMan Podcast.
No, it's just Dinosaur Man Pod.
At DinosaurMan Pod. Andy did some twitching recently, and we'll be doing some probably in the future.
Yeah, I'll maybe do some more this weekend.
John Neves did the theme song. This time it was, I don't know.
Very quiet.
Okay, good. Yes, that's good. Andy, you've hosted. Thank you for that.
Alex, you've also hosted. Thank you for that.
You're welcome for that.
And guys, until next time, shh, that man's eating a Subway off the floor. Don't look at him.
His steak and cheese is melted onto the floor. Okay, bye guys. See you next week.